What is that smell? Oh, just two dirty street rats crawling in from the gutter.
Gerald Whitmore didn't even look up from his steak. Talia Fletcher, 19 years old, swallowed hard.
Sir, we haven't eaten since yesterday. If you'd let us sing one song for a plate of food...
Gerald's fork hit the plate.
Sing for food?
Tables laughed. Talia's eyes burned, but she didn't blink. Gerald leaned forward.
People like you don't belong here. Take that crusty notebook and go howl on a sidewalk.
Tobias, her twin, stood behind her. 19, skinny, silent, clutching that notebook like a shield. 40 people watched. Not one spoke. What Gerald did not know was that in less than 4 minutes, he'd be sitting in dead silence, while the entire room stood for the two kids he just called street rats. Colton's Grill sat on the corner of Carey Street in Richmond, Virginia. White tablecloths, dim lighting, jazz on the speakers most Friday nights. Average entree, $35. The kind of place where people came to feel important. Tonight, the place was packed. Every table full, the bar 3 deep. And at table 4, the same table he'd claimed every Friday for 6 years, Gerald Whitmore held court like a man who owned the room. He didn't own it, but he owned the building it sat in. And in Gerald's world, that was close enough. Gerald was the kind of man who tipped big and talked loud. 56 years old, real estate money, 3 commercial properties on this block alone. Staff smiled when he walked in, not because they liked him, because Brenda Sullivan, the general manager, made it very clear. Gerald Whitmore gets whatever Gerald Whitmore wants, no exceptions. Brenda ran Colton's Grill the way Gerald liked it. Clean, quiet, comfortable. And comfortable had a meaning in this restaurant that nobody said out loud, but everybody understood. If you didn't look like you belonged, Brenda made sure you didn't stay. Tonight was supposed to be a normal Friday. Steaks, wine, Gerald telling stories about his latest property deal while diners at the neighboring tables pretended to be impressed. Then Talia and Tobias Fletcher walked through the front door. They hadn't planned on Colton's Grill. They'd tried 2 other restaurants first, a barbecue spot on Main Street. The owner told them to leave before Talia could finish her sentence. A diner on Broad. The hostess wouldn't even make eye contact. Colton's was the 3rd stop, the last try before giving up for the night and walking back to Pastor Edwin Brooks's shelter with nothing in their stomachs. Pastor Brooks had taken them in 9 months ago. Small shelter off Hull Street, 14 beds, a roof that leaked when it rained hard. But it was warm, and Brooks never once made them feel like charity cases. He was the first adult in a long time who looked at them and didn't see a problem. He saw something else. Every morning before the other residents woke up, Talia and Tobias would sit in the shelter's back hallway and sing. Quietly at first, hymns their mother taught them. Then louder, harmonies that echoed off the cinder block walls and made people stop in the corridor just to listen. Brooks told them once, "Your mama gave you those voices for a reason. Don't you dare let the world take that from you." Their mama, Denise Fletcher, backup singer, gospel circuits across the South, small churches, smaller paychecks. She never got a record deal, never got her name on an album, but she could sing in a way that made strangers cry in the 3rd row of a Wednesday night service. She raised the twins alone in Norfolk. No father in the picture, no family with money. Just Denise and 2 kids and a leather notebook she carried everywhere, filled with songs she wrote on bus rides between gigs. Melodies she hummed to Talia and Tobias every single night before bed. 14 months ago, Denise caught pneumonia. No health insurance. By the time she got to a hospital, her lungs were already shutting down. She died on a Tuesday afternoon. Talia was holding her left hand. Tobias was holding her right. She was 41 years old. After that, everything collapsed. Eviction within 60 days. No relatives willing to take in 2 black teenagers with nothing to offer. The foster system at 18 was a dead end nobody even pretended to care about. Within 3 months, Talia and Tobias were sleeping in a bus station. The only thing they kept was the notebook. Every song their mother ever wrote, every melody, every lyric. Denise Fletcher's entire life as a musician, sealed in cracked leather and held together with a rubber band. Tobias carried it everywhere. He never let it out of his sight, not once. Talia asked him once why he held it so tight. He looked at her and said, "Because it's the only part of her that still has a voice." Now they stood in the entrance of Colton's Grill, hungry, embarrassed, and surrounded by people who had just laughed at them. Brenda Sullivan was already walking toward them. Behind her, Gerald was still grinning, soaking in the applause of his own cruelty. But there was one person in the room who wasn't laughing. Corner booth. Alone. A black man in his mid-40s, dressed simply, jeans, dark blazer, no flash. He had been reading the menu when the twins walked in. Now the menu was flat on the table, and his eyes hadn't left the two kids standing in the doorway. His name was Dominic Calloway, Grammy-nominated music producer, 3 platinum records, 2 nominations in the last 4 years, based in Atlanta. But once a year, every year, he drove to Richmond and ate alone at Colton's Grill. Always the same booth, always a Friday in October. 6 years ago, his daughter used to sit across from him in that booth. She was 17. She loved to sing. She died in a car accident 3 days after her senior prom. This restaurant was their spot. Dominic watched Gerald humiliate the twins. He watched Brenda march toward them. He watched the room laugh. He didn't say a word, not yet. But he put down his menu, and he leaned forward. Brenda Sullivan stopped 3 feet from the twins and crossed her arms. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her tone did all the work. "I'm going to say this once. You have 10 seconds to walk out that door or I'm calling the police." Talia opened her mouth, but Gerald's voice cut across the room first. "What part of get out is confusing for them, Brenda? Must be a comprehension issue. Probably never finished school either." More laughter, softer this time. A few people looked away, but nobody spoke up. Then Tobias did something nobody expected. He stepped forward, past his sister, past the hostess stand, and spoke directly to Brenda. Quiet, steady. No anger, no begging. "Ma'am, we haven't eaten since yesterday morning. We're not asking for charity. We're offering something. One song, just one. If nobody likes it, we'll walk out and never come back." The room went still for half a second. Something in his voice caught people off guard. Not the words, the dignity behind them. Brenda hesitated, just barely. A crack in the armor. Gerald killed it. "Oh, for God's sake, Brenda, I didn't come here to listen to 2 homeless kids audition. Get them out of my sight." Brenda's face hardened. She reached for her phone. That's when the crash came. Hannah Moore, 22, newest waitress on staff, carrying a full tray of plates to table 6. Loss of balance. Porcelain hit tile. Glass shattered. Every head in the restaurant snapped toward the noise. In the chaos, Hannah leaned close to Talia's ear and whispered 4 words. "Stage mic's still on." The jazz musician had canceled tonight. The small stage in the corner was empty. The mic was still set up from last week's performance. Still plugged in. Still live. Talia looked at her brother. Tobias looked down at the notebook. He flipped it open to a page near the middle. A page with their mother's handwriting. He nodded. They didn't run. They walked. Calm, steady, straight to the stage. Nobody noticed. Gerald was laughing at the mess. Brenda was on her knees picking up broken plates. The entire room was looking the wrong way. Then Tobias leaned into the microphone and hummed. One note, low, deep. So deep it didn't just fill the room, it vibrated through the floor. The hum hung in the air like smoke, low, warm, trembling. It reached the back tables before anyone realized where it was coming from. Talia stood beside her brother on that tiny stage. Her heart was slamming against her ribs. She could feel every pair of eyes in the room starting to turn. She could feel Gerald's stare burning through the crowd. She could feel Brenda somewhere behind her, already reaching for a phone. She had maybe 90 seconds, maybe less. Her mind went to every street corner, every subway platform, every church parking lot where she and Tobias had stood with nothing but their voices and an open hand. She'd been laughed at more times than she could count, told to shut up, told to move along, told that nobody wanted to hear it. Every single time she sang anyway. Not because she was brave, because of what her mother told her the night before she died. The voice doesn't belong to you, baby. It belongs to whoever needs to hear it. Talia looked at Tobias. His eyes were already closed. The notebook was open on the music stand, a page near the middle. Their mother's handwriting, small and slanted. The title at the top read, Still Here, written by Denise Fletcher, 2019. She wrote it on a Greyhound bus coming home from a gospel gig in Macon, Georgia. She never performed it. Not once. Tonight would be the first time anyone heard it. Tobias's hum grew. Not louder, deeper. It wasn't a performance. It was a prayer. The kind of sound that starts in the chest and doesn't ask for permission. A woman at the nearest table put her fork down. A man at the bar turned slowly on his stool. Talia wrapped her fingers around the microphone. She didn't adjust it. She leaned in close, the same way her mother used to lean into every mic she ever touched, like she was about to tell it a secret. She took one breath, closed her eyes, and began. The first note that came out of Talia Fletcher's mouth was not loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't shake the walls or rattle the glasses. It was quiet, almost a whisper. The kind of note that sneaks under the noise of a room and wraps itself around your chest before you realize it's there. A woman at table 9 stopped mid-sentence. She didn't finish her thought. She just turned her head toward the stage and forgot what she was saying. Then the note grew. Talia's voice opened up like a door that had been locked for years. Soprano, clear, effortless, but carrying something underneath, something heavy, something old, something that didn't belong in the throat of a 19-year-old girl who hadn't eaten in 2 days. Tobias held the foundation beneath her. His hum had become a bass line, low, rhythmic, steady as a heartbeat. Not a harmony you learn in a classroom, the kind of harmony that only happens between two people who shared a womb. Instinctive, cellular, as if they were breathing with the same set of lungs. The song was Still Here. Their mother wrote it on a bus. She never played it for a crowd. She never recorded it. She hummed it to the twins on nights when the rent was late and the heat was off, and she had nothing to give them except her voice. Now her children were giving it to a room full of strangers who, 30 seconds ago, had laughed at them. 15 seconds in, the bartender stopped pouring. Mid-glass, whiskey ran over the rim and pooled on the counter. He didn't notice. 30 seconds in, conversations died. Not slowly, all at once, like someone had pressed mute on the entire restaurant. Forks went down, phones came out, not to text, to record. 45 seconds in, a woman at table 9 pressed her hand over her mouth. Her husband reached for her arm. She shook her head. She wasn't upset. She was overwhelmed. The lyrics didn't explain pain, they showed it. Rain on a church roof at midnight. A door that keeps closing no matter how many times you knock. Hands that keep reaching even when there's nothing to hold on to. And through all of it, a voice that refuses to stop. Still here. Still standing. Still here. Talia sang it like she meant it. Because she did. Tobias dropped into a sub-bass note on the chorus that had no business coming from a 19-year-old kid. The vibration traveled through the stage, through the floor, into the legs of every chair in the front row. A glass on table 3 trembled against its saucer. Their voices braided together on the second verse. Talia rising, Tobias falling, then meeting in the middle on a major chord so clean, so perfectly locked, that it sounded like one voice split in two. A man at the bar turned all the way around on his stool. He'd been facing the TV. Now the TV didn't exist. At table 12, a white-haired woman set down her reading glasses and leaned forward. Her name was Lorraine Adams, 68 years old, retired vocal coach. 30 years at Virginia Commonwealth University. She had trained hundreds of singers, Opera, jazz, gospel, pop. She knew what raw talent sounded like. And right now, her hands were gripping the edge of the table. At the corner booth, Dominic Calloway had stopped breathing. He had been reaching for his water glass when Talia's voice hit the second verse. His hand froze. The glass stayed on the table. His other hand was still holding a fork, a bite of steak halfway to his mouth. The fork slipped. It clattered against the plate, loud enough for the table next to him to glance over. Dominic didn't pick it up. He didn't move. His eyes were locked on the stage. Locked on two teenagers who were producing a sound he hadn't heard in 23 years in the music industry. Then he reached for his phone. He didn't open the camera. He didn't hit record. He scrolled to a contact, pressed call, and said 5 words so quietly that only the empty seat across from him could have heard. "Get the contract ready. Tonight." He hung up, put the phone face down on the table, and went back to listening. 1 minute in. Then 2. The song built like weather. The verses were rain, steady, insistent, soaking into everything. The chorus was thunder, Talia's voice cracking open the sky while Tobias held the ground beneath it. People weren't just listening anymore. They were leaning in, bodies tilting toward the stage like plants toward sunlight. A teenager at table 5 had tears running down both cheeks and didn't bother wiping them. Gerald Whitmore was not leaning in. He sat rigid at table 4, fork down, jaw tight. His fingers were wrapped around his scotch glass so hard the ice was shaking. He wasn't moved. He was furious. 3 minutes ago, this room belonged to him. Every laugh, every glance, every whispered compliment about his new property deal, all his. Now every single set of eyes was pointed at 2 homeless kids on a stage that wasn't even supposed to be in use tonight. He leaned sideways toward Brenda Sullivan, who was standing frozen behind the bar with a cracked plate still in her hand. Gerald whispered something. Brenda's eyes widened. She looked at him, then at the stage, then back at Gerald. She nodded and started moving toward the sound system panel. But nobody in the audience noticed, because the song